Welcome to episode 1 of A Child Rights Series 2025. This evening, we embark on an important journey to amplify the voices of our children under the theme, Hear the Voices of Our Children, We Have Rights Too. This series is a collaboration with the Early Childhood Commission and a call to action. Through this discussion on the Convention of the Rights of a Child, CRC in action, we aim to spotlight the progress Jamaica has made, share insights from global leaders, and inspire meaningful advocacy for the protection and promotion of children's rights. We're honored to have with us our distinguished panelists, Dr. Karlene DeGrasse Deslandes, ECC, that's Early Childhood Commission's Executive Director, Dr. Rebecca Tortello, Education Specialist at UNICEF Jamaica, and Mercedes Mayol Lassalle, World President of OMEP. I am Winsome Sharia-Witter, your host for this forum, and these experts will guide us in exploring our pivotal role in creating a world where every child's rights are upheld, protected, and celebrated. So we're going to get this discussion started, and let me remind you that our children's voices matter, and so does our commitment to them. So let's bring on our experts. Dr. Karlene DeGrasse Deslandes, welcome back to the Serenity Resource Connector. Been a while.
Thank you, Winsome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We have Dr. Rebecca Tortello from UNICEF. Welcome.
Thank you.
And the lovely Mercedes Mayol Lassalle from OMEP. Thank you for joining us, Mercedes.
Thank you. Good evening for all.
All right. And I'm sure some of our viewers are familiar with the faces, the names, especially if you have been a part of PDI. I'm sure you would be familiar with these faces. So let's get right into the discussion. And as we usually do, we're talking about early childhood, so we have to lay the right foundation so you understand off the bat why exactly we're here. So Karlene exposed for us the reason why we're having this series and why now, because this is the first of 12 episodes in this series. Let's lay the groundwork.
Okay, let's lay the groundwork. So in looking at the thrust in, Early Childhood Commission, every year we look at how do we enhance what we're doing? How do we improve on what we're doing? And so in looking at the thrust at what we would want to do for 2025, we thought about child rights and considering the knowledge of our parents and practitioners towards understanding the rights of our children. We also considered what our children knew regarding their rights, what do they understand? And therefore, the series was conceptualized to increase awareness of child rights, to create an understanding and to build discussion around the articles of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. We wanted our parents and our ECPs to understand their responsibility in implementing these rights and for children to get a clear understanding of what is a right, what are my rights, how do I articulate, how do I advocate for myself in ensuring that my rights are upheld. For example, Article 3 speaks to all actions concerning the child should be done in the best interest of that child. And as we plan for 2025, we looked at, do our parents know and understand that the decisions that they are making, the decisions that are made must always be formulated in the best interest, with the best interest of the child at the fore. In looking at Article 18, which articulates the responsibility again of parents, the fact that parents have a responsibility for the upbringing of their children. How many of our parents, as we thought through what we wanted and what we wanted to promote and how we wanted to advocate this, how many of our parents knew that they had responsibility for the upbringing of their children? It also indicated, Article 18, that is, that parents should be supported in this endeavor through the provision of services, for example, childcare services. And so at the Early Childhood Commission, we have established 126 brain builder centers across Jamaica with the support of the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. There is a commitment to increase by 10 the number of BBCs per year. So brain builder centers are government supported daycare centers that we can say supports the provision of Article 18. Article 28 speaks to access to education, and that is aimed at contributing to eliminating ignorance and illiteracy. We are passionate about early childhood. We want to ensure that at the earliest stages, we're laying the foundation. So you can understand that Article 28, access to information, is very dear to our hearts. Another objective of this series is allowing our children, as I said before, to know and understand their rights and how one individual's observation of their right should not infringe on somebody else observing theirs. We want our children to understand what it means to be valued and to be appreciated for who they are. The ECC has always promoted a rights-based approach. And if you look at our 12 operating standards, Standard 9 speaks to child rights, child protection, and equality. And the idea behind this is that the early childhood institution uphold the rights of children, protect them from harm, and ensure that all children have equal access to service. So you can interpret Standard 9, therefore, as identifying the core principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is non-discrimination, the best interest of the child, the right to life, survival, and development, and respecting the views of our children. Jamaica has always promoted and implemented the principles of the CRC, especially since ratifying the convention in 1991. So our series now, Hear the Voices of Our Children, We Have Rights Too, is scheduled, as Winsome has said, for the third Thursday, and we'll be discussing the articles of the CRC so that we can fuel the conversation among our stakeholders regarding the rights of our children, bringing into the dialogue our parents and our practitioners. Usually we have conversations at levels that don't include our babies. We need to explain to our children what these rights are so they not only have an understanding, but are able to have a voice in what, in the discussion, what we are saying, allowing our children to learn and understand their rights. As you know, the series, as Winsome said, starts today. And so we're looking at the articles of the convention, exploring what these are, exploring, as she said, what we're doing and where we're going. But additionally, we'll be doing every month for this year a different article. For example, in February, we'll be looking at Article 31, which is the child's right to rest, play, culture, and arts. We have linked the articles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child with the events that are happening within Jamaica and the rest of the world. For example, February for us is Play Month for the ECC, and I know it's very dear to Rebecca and UNICEF. And so we promote in February International Play Day and Global Play Day. And so what better to discuss than Article 31, which is a child's right to play. In March, we do Article 18, which is the responsibility of parents. April, we look at our PDI and the tracks of our PDI. And what we have done is link the tracks of our PDI with the articles of the convention. For example, track 1, which is parenting, brings into sharp focus Article 18. Track 2, early learning and care, Article 24. Track 3, which we have added this year, is children's expression. We included that part in our PDI this year because we wanted to hear from our children. We wanted to have them involved in PDI. We wanted for them to be interacting and for them to be learning from us directly and from the practitioners, certain skills. So we're looking at Article 31 when we talk about children expression. Track 4, inclusion, is Article 23. Track 5, stream, Article 28. Track 6, the arts in education, Article 31. Track 7, leadership, Article 29. And track 8, which is advocacy, which we're hoping most of our conversation happens, is Article 14. So in May, we're looking at Article 3, which is the best interest of the child. In June, Article 32, protection from harmful work. In July, it's Article 11 and 35, protection from kidnapping and prevention of sale and trafficking, which is a serious discussion right now across the world as it relates to protecting our children. In August, we'll be looking at Article 4, making rights real. And in addition to the online discussion, we'll be engaging our parents through our community relations officers to ensure that they're included in a real way in the conversations that we're having. So in September, we'll be looking at access to education, Article 28. In October, it's 6 and 24, right to life, survival and development, and health, water, food, and the environment. November 7, the right to a name and nationality, which is critical for our children to know who they are and to love themselves. And in December, Article 23, which will be furthering the conversation around our children with disabilities and their right to enjoy a full and decent life. So that is basically, why we have come up with what we have in looking at what is happening in the world, in looking at where we want to place our emphasis at this point in time, given all the work that has happened, all the work that we have been doing in child rights. We wanted to, again, bring it into sharp focus to ensure that our parents and our practitioners and our children are in the conversations and aware of what we're doing and what is happening.
Wow. I believe that's an awesome way to actually learn and to really understand that this convention is not just something that was signed off on in some room on some other side of the world, but the practicality of how it's been implemented in the space and how the parents and the child, because they too have a voice and they have their own opinions and their views about what really is supposed to happen, and they need to have a better understanding as well so that they can be an impactful part of the discussion going forward. Amazing job there. So let's bring Rebecca into the conversation. UNICEF. How has UNICEF been supporting? I'm sure a lot of people know about UNICEF, but how specifically has UNICEF been supporting the implementation of child rights here in Jamaica? Rebecca.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me on the program. Well, the CRC actually guides the work of UNICEF, around the world in the over 100 plus countries where we're active. In Jamaica, just as in every other country, it helps us with all of the evidence that we generate. It's a guide, it's a guideline, it's a framework. We do a lot of research. We try to find interventions that are evidence-based, which means that we can track the outcome and then work to move that intervention for scale, always keeping the best interests of the child in mind at the forefront of everything that's happening. So, for example, UNICEF's actual tagline is "for every child," and that comes from the CRC. In Jamaica, the CRC is translated into a law, the Child Care and Protection Act. So we do a lot of work with government, policymakers, government ministries, agencies, commissions like the ECC is a very longstanding, strong partner of UNICEF Jamaica, with NGOs, with parents, with teachers, with students, with young people. We do a lot. We try very, very hard to keep the lines of communication open between UNICEF and young people and use our offices as sort of conduit to get the voices of youth to the policymakers on all aspects of our program. And our program really crosses all the different, parts of the CRC and acts of the CRC that Karlene was mentioning earlier. So we work in child protection, we work in health, we work in social policy, we work in education, we work in communications. How do we send messages to our children? How do we involve, as I said, the voices of our children and the actions of our children? Climate change, disaster risk resilience. So we all work with work plans, with outcomes and indicators, and all of those are tied back to the best interest of the child. So the ultimate question is always, how is this going to positively impact Jamaican children, and how many Jamaican children will it positively impact? And we're held accountable for that. We have to report on that, both to the government where we're working and to our regional offices and to the global headquarters. So, in Jamaica, we're talking about at the early childhood level. So we've done a lot of work around inclusion and early screening, identification, and referral, trying to give all children an equal start and equal chance in life. And the earlier we can identify any potential issues, we can try to find ways to support that family and that child to put them on a better trajectory. So we've been working with the ECC on this for a long, long time. So actual tools that are in the public space, in the public domain, things like the Child Health Development Passport, which every baby born receives and has received for, I don't know how many years now, maybe almost 15 years, which is itself an early screening, identification, and referral tool, and then an assessment that begins at age 4 and carry the children as they transition into grade 1, knowing that these early childhood years are so very pivotal to laying that foundation on which the children will build and on which their life opportunity will be based. So we've worked with the ECC on the Brain Builder Centers. We've worked making schools more accessible physically as well, with leveraging other partnerships with local foundations like the Digicel Foundation. We've created pilots of interventions, such as a sensory play-based space in an early childhood institution that itself is a public-private partnership between the government and a foundation called the Rock House Foundation, of course, with the help of the ECC. And that space itself is a model for when children have been assessed and they may need extra support in the early childhood space. A teacher works with that child, but also a practitioner, but also there's partnerships with the health clinical volunteers or clinicians in the area that come to the school and work with those students and students from nearby institutions. And that's a model that we're trying to work with the ECC, the government in general, and other potential partners to replicate. The ECC just created 2 more of these spaces in a partnership with Digicel Foundation as part of one of their legacy activities. And the goal is to try to get these spaces in as many parishes as we can, because when we're screening children, we need to be able to then support the families and the children, right? So it's not really good enough just to screen and identify a problem, but we want to work towards solutions. I mean, I could take up the entire hour telling you all about the different projects and programming that we've done with the ECC around, Karlene mentioned some around play and play-based teaching and learning, which is completely evidence-based, low cost. You don't need, incredible amounts of training to play. High benefit, easy to scale, and has been tested in multiple cultures around the world. So how do we advocate for more play spaces in our communities, for more play time, which is learning time in our schools? How do we all take more time to play ourselves? Because mental health is another key important factor in all of this. And we've been doing a lot of teacher capacity building around mental health and psychosocial support, around training guidance counselors to respond with psychosocial first aid, from a psychosocial first aid perspective. We're working with the ECC now, which we launched at the PDI in 2024, a Healthy Start project, which is based on a national, what we call a multiple indicator cluster survey, which is a household survey that we conducted with Statin, the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, because you'll remember I mentioned that we try to do everything using data-driven program planning and implementation. So the mix told us that during the pandemic, our national levels of immunization in the early childhood age group had fallen off. For obvious reasons, people weren't going to clinics, right? Then there also was a lot of distrust about vaccination. So we've worked with health colleagues, we're working with the ECC to improve parental understanding of what vaccines do, why they're important, and provide access to vaccines, as well as basic understanding on child nutrition, basic understanding on play and the power of play as a teaching and learning and developmental tool. So it's all packaged in this sort of healthy child, healthy start them right from the start angle. And, you know, at the early childhood level, we've also been working hard with the ECC on piloting and now evaluating to be able to move to scale another locally developed intervention, which is called the IRE Classroom Toolbox, which is basically an emotionally supportive discussion-based tool for teachers, or a methodology for teachers to use, how to have discussion-based conversations with children to build their vocabulary, to strengthen their foundational literacy and numeracy, so they will move from the early childhood level into grade 1, 2, and 3 on a strong footing, right? And we need to close that gap so that all of our children are literate and numerate by, you know, age 8 or 9, which is the global standard. So the IRE Classroom Toolbox is being evaluated. We're hoping to finish that this year and scale it up. And the ICT is also very much child rights based. So without even thinking about it, I think we always use that lens. Those are the glasses we always put on in UNICEF. So anything that we're doing, we try to ensure that children's rights are at the heart of it, and also different ways to meet children where they're at, creating accessible digital teaching and learning materials in our accessible digital books that we've created, where sign language is on the screen, working to develop digital interventions that are child-centered and interactive, and working to help the ministry with other international development partners and the ECC too, to be able to digitize its data, to be able to access data in real time about individual children, aggregate groups of children, that will help us to be better at what we're trying to do, which is, at the end result, improve the lives of our children and their life opportunities.
Amazing work. All right. And there's just so much being done. If you're just joining us, Karlene would have laid the groundwork earlier as it relates to why we're doing this series, what you're to expect. And we just heard from Rebecca what UNICEF has been doing in support of the Early Childhood Commission in ensuring the rights of our children here in Jamaica. But the convention is not just about Jamaica. As special as we are, we actually have a number of other member countries. And so Mercedes will tell us how many countries are part of that convention and how OMEP has been supporting child rights among those member countries. Mercedes.
Thank you, Winsome, and thank you, Karlene and Rebecca. I am honored to be here today. I am based in Argentina, but I am the world president of OMEP. So in OMEP, the World Organization for Early Childhood Education, and the name OMEP is because the original name, it was in French, Organisation Mondiale pour l'Éducation Préscolaire. And it was this organization has been working a lot around human rights and the human rights of early childhood. We are working along about 80 countries in the world, and from 1948. We were created in the first Congress organized by UNESCO in Prague many years ago, 77 years ago. And one of the actions funds, the pillar of OMEP is the human rights perspective. And that is why we, from the beginning, we were talking about human rights. So I want to stress that really the fight, the historical nature of the struggle for human rights. And that was why our members, some of our members, were part of the drafting group of the Convention on the Rights of the Child that was coordinated by UNICEF many years ago. And in 1989, finally, they took 10 years. It took 10 years to draft the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and in 1989 was finally approved, and then all the countries begin to adopt the convention. And as Karlene was saying, many inside the convention, there are many human rights addressed. But why OMEP is always stressing the right to education? Because we think that education is not only a right, but also a tool for achieving other rights. And that is why we are always stressing the importance of the realization of education and care as only one coin with two faces. It is a social practice that is impossible to be separated. Our representative not only were part of the drafting group of the declaration, but the convention, but also of one of the most important general comments that were drafted by the Committee on the Rights of the Child. And it was the general comment number 7 that address especially the realization of children's rights during early childhood. Today, we continue working in political advocacy before the United Nations agencies, UNICEF, UNESCO, governments, and spaces for international and national consultation. And we are now working also in order to push in a way the Committee on the Rights of the Child to approve an optional protocol in order to guarantee that early childhood education can be offered for free in all the countries of the world, because we are facing huge inequalities in access all over the world. So we need that states can offer also services for free for all the children that are excluded. As you may know, the convention is an international treaty and that allow the recognition of the citizenship of the child. And what is the citizenship of the child? Well, the recognition that all children since birth, they have they are right holders. And UNCRC was adopted, as I said, in 1989, and in a few years, 96 countries ratified. This is the treaty that was endorsed in the history. It is so extended. Its adoption was a culmination of more than 70 years of efforts to gain recognition from the international community to the specific needs and rights of children. And it is very interesting, the background, because in the background we can find some documents and instruments that we all know, as, for example, the Declaration of the Rights of the Child that was drafted by Eglantine Jebb and later by other humanists that was corrected and it was draft. Finally, it allowed the drafting of our international human rights framework for children, no? And all the human rights, as Karlene said, are totally important. There is no possibility to interpret them, dividing them, because they are interdependent. And that is why, for example, when Rebecca was telling about the work of UNICEF, you can see that all the rights are connected, interdependent, and you have to interpret them in a holistic way. And this compromise with the human rights is not only a compromise that from parents, it's also from communities and of course of states, because the states are have the main responsibility in order to accomplish and to guarantee the rights of each child. And that is why we develop a lot of work, advocacy work, raising awareness about the CRC and all the general comments, especially related to education, cultural rights, participation, play, engaging also policymakers, and promoting the child participation. And of course, this drives us to capacity building for early childhood education. So OMEP has provided for many, many years training, resources to educations and policymakers, curriculums, development, research, developing pedagogical approaches that respect and promote the right to play, to learn, and cultural identity, mother tongue, things that are very important in the early years. In the early years, we need to connect education and pedagogy and didactics with the human rights framework. So we also develop research and knowledge dissemination, researching the impact of early childhood on children's rights and development, publishing reports and recommendations about education for sustainable development. We have been working for 16 years in education for sustainable development in early childhood. And of course, in peace education, because peace is a human right also. We need to raise children in non-violent environments, and we need to try to ensure holistic child development in a peace, with peace education and with education for sustainable development. And of course, we have also direct actions and projects, for example, the Play and Resilience Project, and this is connected with the project of toy libraries to promote the right to play, and the ESD project that integrates education in early childhood curriculum and awareness of the role in protecting the environment and contributed to the sustainable future. And of course, also, we work a lot in international collaboration with another big organizations from the UN, UNESCO, UNICEF, the Global Campaign for Education, many foundations and other organizations and governments, of course. And other thing that we are addressing in the last years is our focus on vulnerable groups connected with children in migration and displacement and children in conflict zones. Of course, cultural rights and diversity. And this is something that I give a lot of, I stress during my presidency, I stress a lot cultural rights, because development is not possible. Children cannot develop with contact with their own culture. So we advocate for mother tongue education and culturally relevant pedagogies, emphasizing the importance of cultural participation as a fundamental right. And that is why this year, for example, our World Conference that will be held in Bologna, Italy, will address this issue: creativity, cultural rights, the languages, the artistic languages of the child. And this is something that shows our concern about what is really foundational learning during early childhood. Foundational learning should include always the culture. Well, this is uh, only a presentation.
Amazing. And that's right. You can't divorce the culture from the foundation if we're going to get it right. Right. I heard 70 years. That stood out for me. So there were a lot of people who went on before that paved the way to get us here, and they've passed the baton on, and we are just so grateful to be able to be a part of the movement to keep this momentum going. All right, Casey Howell sharing that she improved life opportunities for our children is everybody's business. Loving the information and the continued advocacy for our children, investing today for tomorrow. And of course, Team Early Childhood Commission saying Argentina in the house. Mrs. Mercedes Mayol Lassalle was the ECC's keynote speaker for PDI 2024. She continues to make a difference, not just in Argentina, but the world at large. Hats off, Mercedes. Amazing. And we know to those persons in the comments who are sharing that their internet is fluctuating, not to worry. Whatever you miss, you can go back and watch the replay. So don't worry about it. Sorry you're not able to get the full experience live, but that's just the reality of the space that we're in. All right, so we are going to go on over now to look at how each of these organizations will continue to promote child rights. And we're going to bring back in Karlene Deslandes from the ECC to let us know how the ECC will continue to promote child rights.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I just realized I was muted. All right. So in continuing, as was mentioned before, we have the 11 months remaining for the series. And so we will continue to advocate and promote. We'll continue to link the articles, link what we're doing with whatever is happening in the world for that month. So continuous advocacy where child rights is concerned, continue the work that we do with UNICEF, begin working with UNESCO to ensure that we're advocating for our children. As explained before, our PDI is May 19 to 23. PDI 2025 is May 19 to 23, where we will be looking at the different tracks through the child rights lens and ensuring that there's an understanding of what is happening. We plan to involve our regional partners and continue our collaboration in looking at what we have been doing as a region and including in the conversation or partners. We started conversations with Antigua, we started with Cayman, we started with the Bahamas, because we wanted as a region to see where we are. What are we doing? What are the laws that have been passed? How far have we come to ensuring that we're promoting child rights within our individual countries, but not only looking at individual countries, but then how can we have a voice as the region, as the Caribbean, to promote child rights, to ensure that we are saying the same things, we are moving in the same direction where child rights is concerned. And to that end, based on initial discussions with UNESCO, we are planning to look at the early childhood care and education progress assessment tool to identify what the gaps are, what we have done, the laws we have passed, where we are now, but what are the gaps? And how will we develop appropriate intervention strategies to ensure that we're continuing to uphold the rights of our children, that we are moving in the right direction as a commission, as an agency of the Ministry of Education, as a country, Jamaica, what are we doing to continue to promote the rights of our children, to ensure that they're protected, they're safe, they understand their rights, they know what these rights are, they are able to be a part of the conversations, a part of PDI 2024, and it will be a part of PDI 2025, is including our children within the zones of special operations. These are high crime areas. And part of the way forward is to ensure that in interacting with our children, in providing the support that we need to provide to our children in zones of special operations, we have them understand that they have rights too, that we are hearing their voices, that we are including them in the conversation, we're including them in the dialogue, and we're taking into consideration all that affects them, all that impacts them, especially that which impacts them negatively, so that we can ensure that they can attain their full potential.
Amazing work ahead. Let's hear from Mercedes. What's next for 2025 from OMEP and going forward in terms of continuing the advocacy, promoting child rights?
Yes, this Congress will be very important for us, but also we are working in the Committee on the Rights of the Child with other organizations, but like Human Rights Watch, like Right to Education Initiative, like CLADE, the Global Campaign for Education, for this optional protocol. And we are also part of the technical advisory group of UNESCO in order to follow the commitments that all the countries had made with early childhood in the Tashkent Declaration in 2022. But I want to refer something that about the child participation that was addressed by Karlene, because this is very, very important, because I think that sometimes a young child agency as a participant of a family and a community or a society is overlooked or rejected as inappropriate on the grounds of age, of immaturity. In many countries and regions, we have cultural traditions that are very adult-centered, and that emphasize that young children needs to be obedient, to train, to the socialization very narrow, in a narrow view, and young children most of the time are considered as underdeveloped, lacking even the basic capacities for understanding or communicating. The right to be heard in early childhood exceeds the possibility for the child to express themselves through spoken language. This is something important to have in mind. Even the child that do not speak, they express themselves. And that is why a humanist, an Italian humanist that was a part of the drafting group of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Alessandro Barata, gave an example to communicate the capacity of a child that has born prematurely, and the active listening of a neonatologist who perceived the sign of his vegetative signs and his needs through the stethoscope. In this sense, adults, we can quickly realize the value of observation to active listening the child, to active listening its way of communication, her way of communication. And it's about having a green ear, as the poet Gianni Rodari said. It is about to to listen to the voice of the child, even when he or she is not really speaking, but they are expressing themselves. And this is why all the public policies, our action as OMEP, is centered also in the involvement of parents, caregivers, families, teachers, and communities. And in order to develop the skills of the adults to listen the voice, the languages of children.
Very important message indeed. All right, just to highlight something that was shared by the Early Childhood Commission here, that Doug's visionary, not just looking within the regional borders, but ensuring we all realize the mission of the Early Childhood Commission is a global one. And that is why we have these three organizations represented here to demonstrate that global approach. It's not me, myself, and I, but it's a global outlook and a unified approach to how we move forward. And speaking of moving forward, UNICEF, Rebecca, what's on the agenda for UNICEF in continuing the work that's been done?
Well, this year marks the 35th anniversary of the signing of the CRC. So we're going to be doing a lot of different activities and advocacy using that as a springboard, one of which will be the PDI, one of which is this series. Hopefully I'm coming back to talk about play, Karlene. Other partnerships that might evolve and emerge. We would love to have toy libraries in Jamaica. Our library service is actually represented across the island and does, in my opinion, my personal opinion, not UNICEF necessarily, but my personal opinion, tremendous work, and has for many, many, many years. But in the UNICEF standpoint, we're continuing to look deeper at the data from the mix survey I mentioned and generate a number of policy briefs, continue working with organizations like the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities to improve the rights of persons of all ages with disabilities and help parents with children with disabilities and parents who have disabilities themselves to access resources, continue working on the early screening, identification, referral pathway, refining that, the digitization of the many different ways that the government, the Ministry of Education collects data, which can help us, on students, on teachers, on the resources, the infrastructure in the schools, so that we can make more evidence-based, more informed decisions and maximize our resources. We'll be working on women in STEM and just STEM teacher capacity building, or STEAM, I should say, as well as teacher capacity building, continued child-centered teacher, child-friendly teacher and school administrator capacity building. One of our flagship programs, I guess you could say, or one of our successes over the past 5 years was a partnership with the National College for Educational Leadership, where we created a child-friendly schools course using the Convention on the Rights of the Child as the main material, the main source material, and then showing how that CRC is adapted in a school setting, and then using local examples of best practices in schools. And we've identified with the NCEL, the school leaders, some 2,000 plus school leaders have taken the course since then. It's become one of NCEL's most popular courses. And now they have identified what they call CFS ambassadors. So we're going to try to do work with them. There's so much. I'm only telling you about the education program. I'm not even touching on the oxygen plant that was built in St. Anne and the protocols for building more such oxygen plants, on the adolescent teen hubs that exist at the Halfway Tree Transportation Center and the St. Thomas, and the plan to try to move that model to other spaces across the island, again through leveraging partnerships. The advocacy around the updating or the revising of the Child Care Protection Act and around the training of more social workers in the public space to work with children and juveniles who might be in detention, and so many things, my colleagues are doing on a daily basis, or trying to do, because, as I said, the CRC really guides everything that we do. And we're becoming more and more digital. We're trying to go green, and also to meet, as I said, children where they're at. So even very young children, 4 or 5-year-old children, are very savvy with technology, and they use their phones. Yes, we want to limit that time, but we also recognize there's a lot of solid content that's out there that's digital, that can help children, that can close gaps, and that can minimize access. You might not have enough teachers, but if you have one teacher that can be, is the word beamed or spread across different schools, then what can you do with that? And all of these things are being tested around the world in the use of AI to generate teaching tools and lesson plans and mark papers to save the teacher that time and give them more time to focus on the child and building that relationship and that connection that is so important in a classroom, in a positive classroom setting. So, there's a lot going on.
A whole lot going on. I love what I'm hearing. And I am just so happy to be in this space. Let me thank the Early Childhood Commission for choosing Serenity Resource Connector to be their media partner for this series, because I'm sure you had many other options. And so we are really grateful that we have this opportunity where we get to learn so much more and to facilitate learning where the educators, parents, I see basic schools, ECIs, ECDC, primary and infant being represented here in the comments. And I'm sure there are many others who are on that's sharing. Community leaders, Dr. Lavelle, our very constant viewer here on the Serenity Resource Connector, that they're able to get this front seat to hearing what is being done, what is going to be done, and how I'm sure they're thinking of ways that they can be a part of the change that they want to see in the space. And that's the kind of discussion we want to keep going. All right, Early Childhood Commission, Dr. Rebecca Tortello, empowering our educators through the work done at UNICEF Jamaica to be ambassadors for play and inclusive education. All right, so
it's good.
Dr. Deslandes, make sure Dr. Tortello's name is on the list for Play Month.
Always.
Advocate.
There's
right?
no play without UNICEF.
Oh, amazing. We thank our viewers, but we first thank our panelists. Dr. Karlene DeGrasse Deslandes, ECC Executive Director, Mercedes Mayol Lassalle, OMEP World President, and Dr. Rebecca Tortello, UNICEF Education Specialist, for sharing with us, helping us to get a better grasp of what this convention means, and specifically how it ties into our local context, which is very important in the learning process. Let me thank our active participants on the live comments here for sharing, for joining us. And for those who are experiencing challenges, remember that you can go back and watch the replay. And for those should have been here or not here, go ahead and share the link with them so they too can become better informed and learn how they can be a part of this process as we continue to look at child rights. Amazing stuff here. The commitment shared by the ECC, UNICEF, and OMEP assures us that the journey to secure and promote child's rights continues with focused action and collaboration. And speaking of collaboration, let me thank Shades of Elegance in Old Harbor for coming on board to support this space, and for other organizations who want to be a part of this awesome work that's happening over the next 12 months. Well, 11 months remaining. You can reach out to us here at Serenity Resource Connector at serenityadvisor@gmail.com or 876-871-8960 to find out how you can partner with us to keep this series going. So let us leave this forum inspired, not just by what we learned, but by what we can contribute as individuals and as a community. because together we can amplify the voices of our children and ensure their rights are realized in the early years and beyond. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Child Rights Series 2025. So have yourself a fantastic rest of the night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A Child Rights Series 2025 live forum is brought to you on third Tuesdays at 8 p.m. in collaboration with the Early Childhood Commission. Hear the voices of our children. We have rights too. Visit our website at www.serenityresourceconnector.com and subscribe to receive our weekly blog post. Join us again on Thursday at 8 p.m. for our local governance live forum in partnership with the Clarendon Municipal Corporation. Thank you for watching.